Welcome to Wake Up with Joni, the podcast where consciousness meets real world mastery and where ancient wisdom, modern leadership, and awakened living come together to elevate every area of your life. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce a guest whose life is an embodiment of passion, discipline, and purpose driven creativity. Cliff Beach. Cliff is an author, recording artist, radio host, VP of Digital and Operations, entrepreneur, and dynamic professional speaker. He's the powerhouse behind the acclaimed Side Hustle and Flow trilogy, three books that help you live your best life. And we'll talk about those and what the thread is there. Across all of his work, Cliff empowers audiences to do one thing: balance passion with purpose to create sustainable, soul-aligned success. So get ready, because this conversation is guaranteed to inspire you to take massive aligned action in your life, in your creative path, if you so choose. So let's dive in, Cliff.
So excited, Joni. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited that you're here. Yes, my pleasure. I always like to ask in the beginning, kind of, who are you? How did you come to do what you do? There's usually a juicy story behind it.
Yeah, I love that. You explain all the things that I do, and there are always things cropping up. But I always tell people your life is non-linear. So when I started my adult life 20 plus years ago, a lot of things that happened weren't there. But I think the through line for me is that I've carried a childlike curiosity throughout life. I was a very curious child. I grew up in Washington, D.C. I grew up in a very loving family with my mom, my grandma, my aunts. We were very soul centric in church. A lot of my family are ministers. So I grew up in that vein. But they always encouraged me to think for myself, think on my feet, be independent, never accept anything as the gospel, but go research it and figure it out yourself. So I was a very voracious reader in school. The bookmobile would come by and I would get all these books. And when I finally actually started to write my books, the Side Hustle and Flow series, it was really answering with curiosity a childlike question. But essentially, I wanted to figure out, why is one person's life amazing and someone else's isn't? And they really started from the same kind of path. They planted the seeds at the same time, but how does one go so far and some only go a little bit far? And so I wanted to be able to understand, what are the character traits that you need to cultivate and mindsets that you need to have, and ultimately the choices that you decide to do. Now, the crazy thing is that all the time when I worked in research, I was getting my MBA at Pepperdine, I worked as a research assistant. I thought you have to learn how to ask the right questions. But the research professor told me you have to ask the question, and from the data and running the sequence, find out if it's right for you or not. You don't have a crystal ball to know if it's right in the beginning. You have to step out on faith and do the thing first. Then you can report back if it was successful or not. So that really changed my path and trajectory of how I thought about the world. So a lot of times people ask me well, what should I do in this situation? And we say, well, what do you think you should do? And I say, well, let's do that. And then we'll see what happens. That's what science is. It's a hypothesis. We don't know if it's actually going to happen. But if we believe that it will, good intentions follow, that path. When you put the energy there and then you start to flow that. So when you're in the gym and you want to work out, if you're thinking biceps and you're holding the weights, you will start to grow your biceps because you're thinking about it. The intentionality behind it is super important. But I think ultimately it all came down to really accepting this abundance mindset. The universe is so limitless, and all the things that are holding you back are your limiting beliefs, right? So you look at someone like the Wright brothers. How did they move from bicycles to airplanes? When they were a kid, they had these little toy airplanes, and they said, why can't that be a real thing? And that's a novel thing, but they were able to do it not because they had money or government backing, but because they believed that they could. In the same way we got a man on the moon, all these things, it starts from the word and the belief and carries it through. So I'm still on the journey and on the path of figuring it out, but I figure it out forward. And then I document it so that you can learn from my mistakes, so you don't have to go and make those same mistakes, because we're not going to have the lifespan to make all the mistakes. I can accept flying in the airplane here and there. I'm not going to build it myself. There just isn't enough time and energy. That wasn't my aspiration, but it's exciting because I feel that this, as a longevity thing, keeps me young. Like I'm in my
Mhm.
40s, but I feel young because
Yeah.
I
You look
don't,
22, but keep going.
because I don't, because I continue to constantly improve. Never ending improvement. It's a mainstay of I don't believe the knowledge that I had 10 years ago are going to carry me into the next 10 years. So I have to continue to add to that knowledge base.
Yes. And so, two threads of what you're saying. As you're laying the story out, you talked about your spiritual background.
Mm-hmm,
So, you have that piece, which I think is huge. And I don't care where the spirit comes in,
mm-hmm.
it's the spirit. So,
Yes.
that is a big part of your success. And then
Mm.
and the second thing is the mindset. So
Yes.
of abundance, of law of attraction. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think you said that, but it is
Yep.
tied into what you were saying.
Sure.
Law of electromagnetism, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then going back to your example about the Wright brothers, the reason they succeeded was that they were smart and they were committed to doing what they wanted to do, but they weren't doing it for someone for money to be the first. They were doing
Mm-hmm.
it because it was absolute passion to do
Mm-hmm.
it. Okay.
Yes.
All right. When you say side hustle
Mm-hmm.
and flow, let's just
Yes.
start there. What does that mean, side hustle and flow?
Okay, so side hustle. If you've ever seen Shark Tank, I love Damon John. So the story of Fubu, guerrilla marketing from the streets. I'm a musician, so for 20 years I've worked in music, and I tell people we do what's called the Hollywood shuffle. You have to have multiple streams of income. You have to know how to do different things because sometimes something dries up. You have to move on. You have to do this other stuff. And the side hustle was like, how do I keep adding to my portfolio? For music, for instance, I wanted to be a great singer, then I wanted to be a great pianist, then I wanted to be a great songwriter. And from there, then you become a producer and a record label owner and a publishing company because you have to add all these building blocks, sometimes for business reasons, sometimes because of necessity. If you wait for someone to green light you, like the Wright brothers waited for someone to come along and say, we'll now green light you, they wouldn't have gotten it done. So you have to say yes to yourself. And if nobody wants you, they don't want to give you a seat at the table. Shirley Chisholm said, bring your own folding chair. That's what I did. So I built all these building blocks. And so from there, 20 years ago, I'm on radio now. I never thought about doing that. But when I say yes to certain things, I continue to go through. I was on TV, never had been on TV before. Someone said, do you want to be a houseman on television? Yes. Do I know how to do it? Absolutely not. But I'll figure it out as I move forward. And so all these things that I do, people would think, well, did you set out to be a multi hyphenate? In the same way people win awards, do you set out to be an EGOT? No, you set out to be the best you can be and continue to improve. And those things are just the accolades that come from doing the work. But
Yes.
you aren't able to complain about what you didn't get from the work you didn't do, right? The law of sowing and reaping. You have to plant the seed and you have to wait. There's a natural point of it. For anything to come in, if you believe in miracles, there is no miracle if it can be done in the natural and if it can be done immediately. So as much of a miracle as like the waiting time and having the faith, believing that something's going to come, what it cultivates in you. They used to call it long suffering, but basically like patience and building that virtue. It will almost often be harder and take longer than you ever want it to be because that's just the nature of it.
And when you say something's going to come, it may not be that something you thought was good for you,
Mm-hmm.
but it's something that is in alignment with your soul, the something that is
Absolutely.
good for your path that you can't see yet.
Yep.
As you're talking, three or four things popped into my head about when I have said yes, not having any clue how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was working with a leadership company and he said, you're into this. Can you do a health and wellness workshop? Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then I fretted and had my fears and am I enoughs and all the things. And same thing happened with the podcast, which I started 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Oh my, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's still going, but it's like, say yes, I do YouTube videos with Second Act TV for people
Mm-hmm.
over 50. And
Amazing.
oh, it is amazing. But I said yes. I didn't know how or if I was going to be any good, but it's exactly what you're saying. So for people
Mm-hmm.
out there, look them right in the eyeball right now and tell them, go for it.
Yes, not only to go for it, but that you will feel the fear and do it anyway. You will be afraid, and that's great. That energy will help push you along. But ultimately, if you don't say yes, somebody else will, and they will learn about it, and they'll say yes and they don't know. And it will always be uncomfortable because the true growth happens outside of our comfort zone. It's like you have to leave home to then go give prophesy at other places. And so it's interesting because you have to figure it out, but you know that things are able to be figured out, that somebody before you didn't know and figured it out and can tell you about it, or you can go through the steps and figure it out. Almost anything, if you put enough minds and money and time, you can figure it out for a lot of things. But ultimately, it doesn't even matter if everything you do is successful. You look at someone like Edison creating the light bulb, 10,000 experiments. It's like, well, yeah. People were like, well, 9,999 times you failed. No, no. I learned what didn't work so that 10,000th worked. See, the thing is that how many people give up after one or 10 or 100?
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so it's always, that's what I say, it's going to be longer. It's like you have the delays and the disappointments and the denials way before the end deliverance. That's the last thing that's going to happen, right? Because most of the people that you see that are successful, they just continue to go. So that was the side hustle culture of like continue to go, because perseverance is continuing when the feeling to do it has left you way behind, because it's so difficult. You're not going to want to do that every day. If you want to be in shape, when it's snowing outside and you put on the running shoes, you don't want to go out there. You don't become the everyman where you're just impervious to all these elements and natural laws, but you do it because you committed to it. And when from there, the flow was super important. It was like, how do you create this yin and yang? That the natural order of life, you see water flowing, that's good. If water isn't flowing, it's stagnant. And you have to be like water. That it shows up where it needs to go and where it needs to be when it needs to do it, but it's not trying to be anything. If you side hustle and you just hustle, 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 you can burn out because you don't have the flow. Like when music, it's as much about the playing as the rest. They work together because if there's no space, you don't know. In the same way, God creates the universe in the 7 days of creativity in that model. I rest on the seventh day because I can look back and reflect on 6 days if the work was good. I can't say that if I'm just bulldozing forward. This is how people bulldoze through their wins. They don't celebrate those small wins because they're always just like the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. Now you have to stop. And then sometimes
Yes.
you stop to reflect to know, is this working or not? Do I want to make pivots and changes? You can climb a ladder forever and then realize it's on the wrong wall, right? And so there were all these things. I assembled all this kind of knowledge from different thought leaders and people that I admired. And it was all about how can I absorb all this information? And then how can I put this into a book so that if you don't read 100 books like I will in a year, you can now read this book and get all of this knowledge. Even though that I don't have all the knowledge, no one's ever going to have all the knowledge. But I try to just say, what's one thing that moves it just a little bit forward, just micro changes. I call it underwhelming yourself, because that's what happens. People start off in January and they say, I want to lose weight, I want to lose 50 pounds or whatever. And then by January 10th, they stop. Why? Because perfectionism. I missed a day and now I threw the whole thing out. And then also you get to quitter's day and then beyond. It's like, well, just keep getting back on the wagon and continue to see what you can do to improve. But if you're doing micro, so if you're not used to walking for 90 minutes a day, then just start with 5, then 10, and you can build incrementally on it. Because I think sometimes people try to do a lot of things at once, like the movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once, and that is so overwhelming that once you have more than 3 focuses, you don't have any, because you just can't keep up. That's why when you see someone juggling, I taught you 2 balls, maybe 3, you keep it going. I started talking 5, 6, 7, some balls are going to drop because you just
Yeah.
can't. And it was like, it wasn't until I listened to Pima Chadron, and she had this book that she had done this speech. And basically, she talked about like life being a bowl of frogs. And she was like, these frogs are hopping into the bowl. And she was like, if you get 3 at a time in there, that's amazing. You're not going to get more than that because the one is going to hop out. And if you want to get all your frogs in that bowl, you have to anesthetize them, but then they won't be frogs anymore. They'll just be comatose frogs. And so
Are
the
you
flow.
saying to focus on maybe 1 or 2 things as your main, let's say it's a work thing, as your main work or career?
in
And
that space and time. You can
okay,
alternate what the two or three things are, but at
I
any
see.
one given moment, you need to focus on two or three because
Yeah.
they'll start to cannibalize the efforts. It's like you'll dilute it by having too many things at once. So it doesn't mean the things you do now are the only three things you'll always do. But whenever you
Got it.
drop one and add another, you want to make sure symbiotically you have two or three at a time.
Okay. Excellent advice. I have heard that you can only hold seven things in your head at once, which is why I have people make lists, like get it outside of your head. Otherwise, you're going through the list all the time. I need to do this. I need to do that. I need to do this. I want to ask you very specifically what your definition is of one, abundance or success or both, and the trap people fall into with their ideas of what that might be for them. Like success could be for them a 10,000 square foot house and three Ferraris. Is that reasonable? And is that really bringing you happiness?
There are so many ways that you can go with that. I can definitely say the freedom of your time is
Yes.
success, but also health and relationships. So you think of the wheel of life, it's like it's not one thing, it's those things. But I can definitely tell you, like Marie Kondo, you grab this thing, does it spark joy? That was the first time I ever heard anyone say that, like with this possession. I don't love this, I don't need this. It's just something I have. It's like, well, get rid of it. Because one, when you get rid of things, you have an open hand, you can now receive again. If you're so full and stacked, there's nowhere for it to go. Then the universe is like, you're satiated, you're good. There's nowhere to put them.
Right.
Success, again, just like knowing the right answers, it's what's right to you. So the definition of success would be different to everybody. But I would say the more joy you have, the more successful you are. But in terms of materialism, I will say if you own it, success. If it owns you, I don't even know what you call that, but that is the antithesis of success because it's become an idol or something that's blocking you. If you love something that much, a material thing like this car, oh my gosh, if something happened to it, I just will be distraught. It's like, well, it's just a car. If it gets you from A to B, does it really matter that much? And could you do something else?
So when you said that, my mind went to, do you own it or does it own you? I went to, a person finally buys the house they've always wanted that's going to make them happy, but they've overbought, or the market shifts, or they lose their job. And now the debt and the mortgage and the stress owns them. So,
Yeah, so I live in the mansion with 40 rooms by myself. Is
yeah,
that
good
there's no
point.
community, there's no laughter, there's nothing to fill it? Is that success? I don't know, but I don't think that is by design. I tell people all the time, there are people who buy boats. I'm like, I don't know if I would buy a boat. Like when you need it, rent it. But the upkeep of having it and the money is like, people do that. People have time
Money pit.
shares, like, but you don't take time off or you do these other things. It doesn't mean there's a right or wrong, but you have to look at it and be like, am I doing this because this sparks joy to me, or am I trying to keep up with somebody else or someone else's definition, which could be outdated or faded or not true? But there isn't a wrong way. If you buy the house and you love it and it creates joy, and it doesn't, then it's good. But
Yes.
I've seen people that buy houses and I'm like, this is too much house, or it's not in the great area for you. And some people are like, well, I can't let it go. I think
Yeah.
most of the things you're talking about is that letting things go in life. You're holding on to so many things. So it could be anger, it could be certain feelings, it could be certain emotions, it could be certain places. There are seasons of life, winter, spring, summer, fall. There are seasons of chapters of where you need to be. You may be in one area, like I've been in California the last 20 years, and now I'm thinking, is this the only place to be? Do I want to be other places? Do I want to not have a place and just be a digital nomad? I have the opportunities. And so with COVID and the pandemic and things becoming on Zoom and things like that, it opened up a plethora of options of not only who you could connect with, but that I'm not tied physically to a geographic location for certain reasons. And it doesn't mean that wanting to nest and anchor and have a place somewhere can be great or not. But it's like you have to have self awareness and you have to ask the self reflecting questions. If you ask the right questions to yourself or ask any questions to yourself and decide on that internally, you listen to that quiet voice, the inner pilot inside of you that's guiding you where to go. I personally don't want to be tied to a home or possessions or a location, because I may be able to have other things or thrive in a different place that I may not have been open to as I evolve and change. And doesn't mean if you want to have those things, and again, it brings you joy, do it. But 10 years ago, it brought me joy and now it doesn't. I can make a change. It doesn't mean that forever it's going to be the same joy or the seasons change. You might need something different in your life now, or you may love it, even appreciate it differently, but you still have to look at it and reflect. That's why you have to physically grab it, like Marie Kondo said, and say, does this spark me joy? Ask the question and then listen and decide.
Let's pull a couple threads on that. I would like more questions for people to ask. So
Yes.
that's a great question. Does this bring me joy? What's another
Mm.
question they can ask themselves?
In terms of purpose, which I think everyone should have, I studied Japanese culture and ikigai. It's why am I here? What does society need from me? What
Mm,
am I good at? And what do I do that I would do for free? That's what people should do. Because as a musician, in the beginning, people said, well, you're not going to make money from it. You're not going to do that. You should do something practical, whatever. And you want to create a society of the most unhappy people with no culture, no art. Van Gogh didn't sell anything in his lifetime, and it's amazing. But he had to get that out of him, or he would have been crazy anyway. And so you have to have that. You don't want a whole group of people who can't express themselves. They have no mediums to express themselves. And you can't always do it for yourself. That's why you have to ask what the society needs from me. You can't always do it because it's going to make you money, because some things you're good at aren't going to make money. They are not monetized. Or if you do it for money, you may not be happy doing it that way. So you have to ask that. But what are you good at and love to do? I was talking to a person the other day and they used to volunteer with children, but I'm thinking I'm not in that season. I was like, just because you're good at something and can do something does not mean you should do it in that season, because sometimes that isn't where you're at. Doesn't mean
yeah,
that you can't do it. It's just not the season for it. So yeah, I would say, why am I here? What am I good at? What do I love to do? What does society need from me?
yeah.
And what would I do essentially for free?
Excellent. I love it. I'm glad I asked that question. So going back to holding on to things, I believe, and I'd like your opinion on this, and then how to help people move out of it. People think that they need or hold on to things because somehow it's part of their identity, that
Mm-hmm.
somehow that's part of their worth in the world, which you and I know that is completely untrue.
Yes.
But I don't want to put words in your mouth, so you tell me what you think.
When I was trying to lose weight and get healthy, I was able to clean up type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure, high cholesterol. And it's a lifelong journey. I learned you have to love the foods that love you back. You have to love the things that love you back. If it's not loving you back, it's time to let that go. I also learned when I started doing Tai Chi and Qigong, I had for years no idea that your organs store emotions, your liver stores anger. I had never done any breath work to say, I need to let go and forgive this anger, this rage, for it could be very valid reasons. But the thing is that whoever has wronged me and have moved on and they have joy in their life and me being miserable, why am I continuing to drink that poison to make myself sick, hoping that they die? That will
Yeah.
never happen. It's illogical. And so it's like we do that. But I love that Mel Robbins this year dropped her book, The Let Them Theory. People, they walk out of your life, let them. People treat you wrong and you disappear, let them. Why? Because you're trying to control an uncontrollable. You can't control another person and what they do. So when they show you who they truly are and the universe says it's time to let them go, let them go. Because again, now with the open hand, the right people can come along. The right situations can come along. Years ago, I read this book, Mind Over Medicine, from Lissa Rankin. She was super sick as a doctor, couldn't get any help being a medical professional. And finally, she said, you know what? You have to write the prescription for your own life. She quit her job. It was too stressful. And there are so many people who have soul-sucking jobs, nothing in their purpose. They do it because someone told them to do it, or they thought that was the thing to do. And it's not you were wrong about making decisions then, but if it's literally killing you, if the stress, because for years I thought you want to limit your chronic stress. And then finally someone said, no, you have to eliminate completely chronic stress. If you're working a job that's that stressful, and I'm not talking about a life-saving job, I'm talking you're working at a desk and your boss is a tyrant and they're not good, it's just time to move on. And
Yeah.
so the let them theory allows you to say, you know what, it's okay. It's okay. In the same way, as a manager, sometimes you have to let them. You have to free some people to be like, this is not the place for you. This is not the job for you. It's not a personal attack, but you're just not wired for this. I have a person who is a nurse. She does not like working with people. That's probably not a good job. Or you're a teacher and you want to yell at kids, they stress you out. Maybe not the place for you. Maybe administration is. Doesn't mean your heart's not in the right place. I think we just have to, as an adult, you have to push back on everything you heard from anybody else and figure out for yourself if that information is serving you. Zig Ziglar, who I love, he had this great analogy of his wife would always cut the end of his ham off. And he said, I paid good money for that ham, woman. Why did you do it? He said, my mom always did it. So they go to mama. Why do you do it? She says, I don't know. Grandma did it. They go to grandma. Grandma, why do you cut the end of the ham off? She said, I don't know why you do it. My roaster was too short. See, the thing is, you passed down this, and now people have made it their gospel. In the same way, you had a great thing that you asked me. You said something about how people make it their identity. People do that with illness all the time. That's my
Yes.
diabetes. Oh, that's my diabetes. Now you can never be free of that because you have now let it take up
Owned it.
room in your
Yes.
life. Until I said, no, that's not my diabetes. These are the things of diabetes happening to me. I'm just an angry person. That's an identity. Now you're just going to be angry all the time. You're going to be raging out an Incredible Hulk and ripping up the shirts. That was an angry moment. And the same day, people are like, I have good days and bad days. I have only good days. I choose to have good days. I have bad moments in a day, but I don't make it the whole day because
Yeah.
that would just tarnish. That would make me not have to find any gratitude in a day. And I want to be grateful every day. And so
And
I
it
think,
gives you
yeah.
an excuse,
Mm-hmm.
right? To continue to be angry, to continue to stay the same, to not do the work to evolve.
And it's all you know. So it's like you're afraid of like, oh my gosh, if I let this go, who am I?
Am I?
Because it's
Yeah.
my identity. Yeah.
Absolutely. I was talking to a teacher just this morning, one of my coaching calls, and her pension, she'll get it in 2 years. And she's counting down. I said, no, 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 that's not how this works. It's how can I bring joy to this day, every single day, and in this moment, and in this day, and then this day, and in this day, so that on the final day, it's like, oh, not slogging into the finish line, but being of service to herself and her children to her absolute utmost. And then she gets to have the experience of, in the Toltec wisdom, it's every day's your last day, basically. Live it that way. How are you going to live it? And so she was blown away. She's getting a whole new calendar. I totally get it. Go ahead, finish out those 2 years. You've worked hard for that pension, and
Mm-hmm.
and these children will get a different you, a different experience of you when you're coming to it in a different way. And that
Exactly.
people in our lives are going to get the same thing. We approach life with joy and accountability. Talk to me about accountability. A lot of victims out there. Okay.
Well, I love that word. You can't be a victor and a victim in the same body. You have to decide which you're going to be. But yeah, accountability, I would say and I'm talking Western culture, America, we have done everything we could to erode personal responsibility. If we can blame the government, we can blame financial stuff. Again, you get back to,
Parents.
yeah, our parents. And again, what they did and didn't do. You're an adult now. You can never hop in a time machine and fix that. You're going to have radical acceptance and move on. Whatever mom and dad didn't do, they did the best they could, or they didn't. Forgive. We have to be moving forward. Well, it's like when I was a kid, I would play the original Mario Brothers, and I tell people that's life. When you go back, can't, right? He has to
Mhm.
go that way. The princess and the castle forward. That's the only way. And so accountability, you just can't get as far in life if you're not personally responsible. If you don't believe that you can affect change, because that's so the curiosity question from the beginning, why is one life better than another? Is the same thing. Why is it that someone can thrive in the worst situations, in the financial downturn, in the worst government? If they can do that, then that means that it is possible to do that. Like Roger Bannister, you can now run under a 4 minute mile because someone did it and proved you could. People thought you couldn't until you could. And you have to always attempt the impossible to make it possible. But the personal responsibility is the deciding factor. You have to choose. And to be in a country like America where you can wake up and say, I am a business, I want to sell this, I want to do this. You don't have to ask anybody, you don't need approval, you can just do that. That's amazing because not all countries can do that. And so I think we I think part of it is how we're groomed and raised, but also most of us are educated in public school. Public school and education was meant to control. It was not meant to creatively think. That's why you look at the work of Sir Ken Robinson. He says in kindergarten, who wants to dance, who wants to sing? Everybody lights up, raise their hand. That's joy, right?
Mhm.
By the time you get to 12th grade, how many people? Less than 5%. You've now eradicated joy out of 95% of the people, because now joyless, soulless people can go work in an office and get paid whatever, and they're not going to make waves or say anything because they weren't taught to think or speak up. I think personal responsibility allows you to be able to say, no matter what did or didn't happen, it's up to me now. I'm going to put the S on my chest and the cape because I am that Superman, Superwoman, because no one else is coming. That's all you can do. But it's like we all start from somewhere. We're all just a kid from somewhere. And we have our entire lives. That's why I love that you're working with people over 50, because that's a great time to start. Colonel Sanders didn't start frying chicken until 65 because he didn't like his pension. And that's why pain and those life lessons push you to move, to make something of yourself. If it was easy, everyone would be rich, everyone would be skinny. We know that's not easy, but it is possible. And so I think the personal responsibility allows you to do it. And I always say, just shoot for the moon. If you try to get to 100% and you only get to 50, you're still way better than zero. And you weren't going to do anything before. And getting mentors, going out there, getting a coach, talking to someone who knows, who can help you get unstuck. Because most of the world is stuck in inertia, right? And inertia creates more sedentary lifestyles. You know, the world of people who live over 100, they move every day. They use their body the way it was intended, to garden, to laugh, to commune with people. And when you do that, it's going to spark in you joy, and that joy is going to spread and spark in you other ideas. I tell people, like, the Bible says, be fruitful and multiply. When I was growing up, people, that all this meant have a bunch of babies. I was like, my music is my babies. These ideas are my babies. They spring up in people I will never meet. And so that's what we're all created to do. We are created by the creator, by the universe, to create. So when anyone tells me I'm not creative, I say, who told you that? That's a lie. Everyone can create in any permutation of how you want to do it. We naturally were designed to create. Now, again, the education system beats that out of us, which is why we don't have as many. But it doesn't mean that just because you didn't the last 50 years, you still have years in front of you. You can still pick up that paintbrush like Grandma Moses in her 80s. And she was one of the best world-renowned painters. They said if she started at 20, she would have been the most famous painter of all time. So
Yeah.
you can do it.
Yeah. So the centurions, the over 100, they did a study and they found that it wasn't necessarily what they were eating exactly, but it was the lack of stress,
Mm,
zero systemic stress, stress. And so what they were eating, it was nourishing their bodies. What they were doing, being in the garden, as you said, they were connected to that. So there were two huge things that I want to talk to you about. One is your health journey, because you had type 2 diabetes and then you
mhm,
reversed that. So that has everything to do with discipline and attitude and choice. And I
mhm,
think for me, it's becoming an ally with the body
mhm.
as opposed to fighting it. And then the other piece that I want to talk to you about, you mentioned community. Remember the mansion with the 40 rooms and there's no community? I want to talk to you about tribe and community. So let's
Yeah.
start with the health piece.
Well, the health piece. So the interesting thing is that I had to, for better words, I had to push back against Western medicine. That's why I started getting to Eastern philosophy, Eastern medicine. They were more holistic. And I heard it described this way. They said in Western science, you want to learn about a frog, you pluck it out of its environment, you put it into a sterile environment, you kill it, you cut it open, you'll know all kinds of things about a frog. In the Eastern philosophy, we go study in the habitat of the frog. Why? Because I want to know if that frog had a girlfriend, and I can only know if I go to the lily pad. And so that's what the difference of Western and medicine does. So in Western medicine, we cut, we dissect, we surgery, we're great. You have cancer,
Diagnose.
we eradicate, we'll do it. But what got you there and what changes you could have done to help with that earlier and also reverse it, reversal was almost never talked about. My doctor actually had to end up leaving because he told me at the end, even after losing the weight, he would never take me off medication. And eventually everyone will just have medication with a vitamin. We'll all just take a pill. We'll just all be on pills. And I didn't believe that. And it wasn't wrong. It's like what you learn about Western medicine when it comes to like your body and diet, they don't study as doctors what you eat. It's like very little, if any, elective hours of the 8 years of medical school because they don't focus on it. So the preventative care has a long way to go. But again, you have to be your own best advocate because even the best doctor, they don't know that body. You've been in that body 40, 50 years. Who knows more about that? You're the only one that can say that. You're the only one that actually feels it. They can imagine, they can speculate, they can predict. When I was born, I was premature. They said, well, this person is going to live. And then they said, well, if he does live, he's going to be severely retarded and all things. None of that happened. But that's what they predicted. And now, if my family believed that, it might have shaped me different. Luckily, they had faith. So we're going to pray about it. We don't believe that. I lived a life that had some difficulties, but I grew out of them. So it was like knowing that I had reversed things in the past through diet. I knew that it was possible. And I knew that being extreme was going to do that. And it was funny because you asked me, like, how do you have the discipline to do that? Well, the nutritionist hands you a list and they say you can have any food you want if it's on this list. So you do get to do what you want. You do get to choose and it doesn't matter. But it's funny because you laugh about it, you make it a game. There are different diets and different things. So you try all the things with the success leaves clues. But I think the main thing when you talked about identity is that I wanted people to know that just because it's in your genes, you can transcend them. I didn't want people to say, well, grandma had diabetes, so I'll just eat cake and my foot will get cut off. That's how people were around me. It was very common. I had a grandpa, he didn't go to the doctor, he had diabetes, he went blind. These things happen. I didn't want that. And I knew I stopped drinking alcohol. I heard the voice say, this is no longer serving you, do that. The doctors never told me that. It was a personal choice. But I knew that I had some liver issues. And I was like, well, alcohol would not be helping my liver, so it'll help the body to heal. I think that's what people have to understand is that rest when you intermittent fast, the reason why it helps is because it allows your body to absorb the excess. Digestion is difficult. That's why in fight or flight, you stop digestion. People don't realize like those autonomic processes. It's like running all the apps on your phone. You're like, why is my battery constantly draining? You don't realize it. We're trained to be unaware of those things and groomed in us over years and years of pushing it out of our conscious mind, but it's still affecting us. I just think that people have to understand that you can just do a little bit better and that you can speak up for yourself. Also, in Western medicine, compared to Eastern medicine, like the time they spend with you, like you spend so little time, 3 minutes with someone, they look at a paper for a second, they say, take these pills. You have to really sit with the person to know them. If you were trying to date someone and court them, you can't do that in 5 minutes. You're not going to know everything about them. And so it's just like doing that. But the markers, seeing it over time, we have ways to be able to track that. Pre-diabetes starts creeping up, right? To get to diabetes. But if you don't go and get those checkups and see the markers, sometimes they don't do anything until you cross the threshold.
Oh, yeah.
You could have prevented it earlier. And also, there's a term post diabetes, right? So if I'm pointing to the right, I'm creeping from pre-diabetes to diabetes. Post diabetes, which looks now going back to pre-diabetes, they didn't even have a term that I'm going into remission. It's now only coming up as post. I'm to the left going backwards to get better. But it's possible. And it doesn't mean that everything can be reversed, but things can be mitigated and they can be helped. And ultimately, even if you change the diet and do other stuff, you'll still be better off than not making those changes, even if the numbers don't move the needles. Your countenance and your spirit will change for sure.
Yeah, you have more access to your own energy and your own spirit.
Mm-hmm.
I did something recently, which I don't know if you've done this yet, but I put into Chat GPT.
Oh, yes.
I put in all my blood work. I put in recent tests. I put in my age, my health, all the exercise, all the things, put it all in there. Woof. And I said, what's going on? It was fascinating. And it wasn't even minutes, it was seconds, within seconds. And I heard on another podcast that right now, ChatGPT or AI is about 60% accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Human doctors are around 20%.
Wow.
And that AI will get to be about 70%. And I'm not saying for people out there to, I'm saying use it as a tool in conjunction with the human out there, the doctor. Essentially, it told me to sit down, just relax, you're fine.
That's amazing.
It was amazing. It was really amazing. What I've always been told and understood is that Western medicine is really great at the diagnostics.
Mm-hmm.
If you need surgery or if you need these giant tests or whatever, great, amazing. But the treating part is the Eastern medicine. So to
Mm-hmm.
dovetail them and bring them in together is really the most powerful combination. Which brings me back to your Qigong and your, what was it? Tai
Tai
Chi.
Chi.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right. So we also were talking about systemic stress. If you're in a stressful situation, quit, get out, whatever. But if you've chosen to be an EMT, if you've chosen to be a police officer or a Navy SEAL, they're doing breath work.
Mm-hmm.
They literally do the box breath work. And I'll tell people that, like in a corporate setting. So the big macho men who have never done breath work and have poo-poo meditation, yeah, whatever. I'm like, the Navy SEALs do it.
Mm-hmm.
You're tougher than them. So talk to me about how that has changed your relationship to your body. Can you feel what's going on in your body now? I mean, to me, it's just fascinating how I just thought I was like a blob of two arms and two legs, and I'm just walking through life. But all these miraculous things are going on inside.
Yeah, well, yeah, it all started on the journey because I started getting acupuncture at
Mm,
this school, and then the school had a community clinic, and then the clinic opened for people to start learning about Qigong and Tai Chi. So it was a great introductory of like, oh, we're doing it upstairs, come in the morning, and then get acupuncture. So I started doing that for about a year, and they feel your pulse and they check your tongue and they do certain things. And what you learn when you're stressed, I remember years ago, I got one of my ears pierced, and they're like, people stop breathing when you go through something like that. And you don't notice it, but it's like that you're holding your breath so
mhm,
much of life. You
mhm,
are breathing shallow breaths. You're not breathing deep yoga breath or belly breath. And
mhm,
so the reason why the breath work is so good is because part of that letting go, it's like you inhale and you exhale. And on that exhale, right, you breathe it in as oxygen, you release it as carbon dioxide, right? So I'm taking in what I need and I'm giving out something that I don't need, but the trees need, right? So you're doing all this breath work and you're blowing it into the trees. You're putting all those emotions and negativity out into the ground, not into people, but you're getting it out there so that you're able to free up the space. And what that does to every cell that needs that breath, right? You're just getting so much more of this O2 that can fill your lungs, fill your blood. The thing is that you forget that the body is a system. It's an
yeah,
ecosystem and everything is connected. If you stub your toe, you're like, wow, I feel it everywhere. Yeah, because the whole body is connected, right? And so that community tribe is part of that connectivity, right? There's a reason why you can't know all the knowledge or do all the things. I was doing some home projects with another person, and they weren't possible by yourself. It'd be so difficult. You just need someone to steady it and hold it and hammer. I needed four hands. And the reason why it's like that, there's that metaphor where they show heaven and hell, and they have these, everyone's eating and they have these super long spoons, right? And in one scenario, no one can eat because they're like, the spoons are too long. And in heaven, everyone's feeding each other, right? They learn
never
how,
seen that.
yeah, they learn how to do that. There's beauty of being by yourself, obviously, and rejuvenating. And some people are introverted and that's how they recharge, all good. But there's always the point of needing community. And that's why doing the Tai Chi and the Qigong allowed me to be in community, to be with like-minded people. And the vibration that you feel when everybody is doing that is different than doing it alone. And also, again, letting it go. That was the first time anyone said that you harboring this feeling or this emotion? It's stored here and you need to breathe that out. And we did it in every system, and the lungs and the kidneys and the thing. And that's why diabetes, which has a lot to do with the pancreas, has a lot to
Mhm,
do with the liver, right?
mhm.
So people think, oh, I had my gallbladder out, but I can live with that. The body is a system. My mom had her thyroid out. Now she's going through menopause, so all those different hormones and stuff. I was like, you're going to have a different experience because you're missing this organ, right? So yes, Western medicine, can we take it out? Can we eradicate it? Sure. But it's a yin yang. You take out one thing, it's going to show up in a different area. That's why I love reflexology. All these places in your foot, they're like, these are all your organs. I would never think of the foot to be your kidneys and your liver and your pancreas or whatever, but the body is connected. It's
Right.
connected in multiple ways. And if they've been doing these things for hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years that have created longevity and joy and peace, don't forget
Yes.
peace, joy and
Yes.
peace, the balance of that is it's good to do it.
They work with your feet, and every single point on your foot corresponds to, say, a tooth or an elbow or a kidney or it's very powerful.
Yes.
I totally agree. And the other thing about the breathing fully into the lungs, we breathe too shallowly in this. Absolutely. A lot of sitting going on. But what I heard the other day was older people, for example, they breathe too shallowly. And then when they get sick, they end up with pneumonia because they're not breathing into their lungs. So, folks out there, breathe all the way down into your bellies. And then the piece about the community, what I wanted to, and you touched on it a little bit, but in my head popped in two scenarios. One is the only child in a wealthy family with a 5 bedroom house, and then the one of 6 children with the mom and dad in a 1 bedroom apartment. And why are they happy? I mean, of course, it varies from house to house and everything, but they can be incredibly happy in that community, in that tribe, in that space, depending on how they treat one another and how their attitude toward life. And then the spoiled, very focused on, and then that made me think in today's society, we're not having 2.3 children. We're having 0 children or one. And so there's nothing wrong with being an only child. I know happy, well adjusted only children. But what are your thoughts on my rant?
Well, I mean, I think you have your friends, you have your family, you have your community. It's like the African proverb, it takes a village. It's because it's a full community. There are collectivist societies where it's everyone's children, it's everyone to educate, it's everyone to mentor. And so I think you can be an only child and with your parents and still be a part of community groups and support groups and other things in school to be able to have that. And there are people, yes, who may have less but they have a lot of love and they live in a one room thing with 6 people. There are other cultures who have less, but everyone has so much joy. They have so much happiness. They have so much thankfulness and gratitude. I always tell people I learned you, with other people, 2 or more, you double the joy, but you split the burden, right, in half. And
Mm,
so sharing that load, being able to, families that come home and they talk about their day and they have dinner together for kids, that is not only communal, but that keeps them more intact. Why would they be an only child and they end up in a gang? Because the gang became their family, because they
yeah.
ate together, because they were communal. It gave them a place, because we all have a sense of belonging, right? We have to figure out, where do I fit into the world? And but I only fit into the world in relation to the rest of the population. It's not just me. I'm not on an island. And so I think it doesn't really matter. You don't get to pick your family in the science to that degree. If you're only child, you're only child. If you have five, you have five, and they all have pros and cons and different things that you learn. But that's why it's good to be able to. I tell people that you have the family that you're born into, and you have the family that you create. And so,
Yeah.
as an adult, you get to wave a magic wand and say, "This is my family." I get to make them and curate what I wanted in my life. Because sometimes in families, you don't have a lot in common. You accept being blood related. I also, my great grandma, my grandma was adopted. There was no one closer than me than my great grandma, and we had no blood relation. So it had nothing to do with that. It had
Yeah.
to do with the love that we shared and the bond that we built over many, many years. And I still champion her life when I get to talk about her as I am now. Hopefully, with your family, you build great relationships. No matter what you do, it's going to take work. No relationship is easy. There's a part of us that always says, like, it's easier alone. That's why, yeah, you can definitely get further faster by yourself in some situations, but you can go for the distance alone. Like, we were only able to survive as a species by having a community. That's what kept us alive. We would have got plucked off one by one by predators if we didn't build a tribe.
Yeah. If you look at it, that yes, being in a relationship is a university setting because you're constantly going to be triggered and have mirrors and things come up. And rather than go, oh, it's their fault, going back to the victim victor, it's more like, oh, wow, great. Another opportunity for me to see where I need to work on myself. It
Yeah.
took a while to get to that place, by the way.
It does. And also, there are going to be people who, some people need more care, right? If you could just find all easy people who were easy to love all the time, that would be great. But life's going to send you some people who are going to be hard to work with, hard to deal with, but there's a lesson to learn. And sometimes you don't realize that person and everybody on the world is fighting a war inside that only they know. You don't know
Mm,
what's happening in their life. And I can almost tell you when you look at a person and you see their inner child screaming at you for whatever reason, it has nothing to do with you. This is
yes.
some hurt from a long time ago that they may or may not deal with, but you don't have to take that on. Doesn't mean you have to be like a doormat or a dump truck, that kind of thing. But I can always say when you get to people, like I remember when I met my best friend, we did not like each other in the beginning and we had a misunderstanding. And eventually we became so close. We're like brother and sister. But it was because we could be wrong. Whatever we thought, when we got back to it a couple weeks later, we said, I don't even remember what it is. Like, why would we even be upset about the thing? It doesn't matter. And we had so many layers, right? When you're deep in relationships, and you're not going to have deep relationships with everyone. Most relationships you have are superficial. The inner
Mhm.
circle, you have less than five. That's why you have
Yeah.
five fingers. Because you can't. You cannot have thousands of people. I think what society has done, like social media, is you call people friends. They're acquaintances. You don't know them. I've
Yeah.
known people in LA 20 years. I don't know anything about them, never been to their house. They don't know anything about me. They know what I publicly shared. They may know some stats, a rookie card, cool, but that's not a real inner circle person. Inner circle
Yeah.
person is if we're on an island and trapped, we can make it and we really deeply, because people are onions, so many layers deep. It takes a long time to build the trust to
Yeah.
get to that level. But if you show up in people's lives and you say, what can I give? That's going to be infectious to almost anybody. Everybody will take. Now, you can't just be taking from everybody because you can't be depleted. It's like with health or anything else, you have to keep your teapot and your saucer and your cup full, right? For years, you burn out because you gave from your cup and your cup is empty, and then the saucer's empty and the teapot's empty, and now you got to borrow from someone else's teapot. That's how people burn out. It's like they
Yeah.
don't realize like, you have to keep your full cup. Then you can give from abundance. That's why you have to adopt an abundance mindset. Twice, I've had something stolen from my car. And I say, you know what? I'm glad that I had the abundance that someone wanted to rob me. Good for you. You must need it. And I hope it served you well. And
Yeah.
so
So
I
that
think,
didn't lodge in your kidney or your
no,
pancreas.
no. But it's fascinating because I have been in situations with community, joining groups and doing things that I never would have done alone. I had no interest in it. I didn't see the value of it. I wasn't knowledgeable about it. And so I think we have all the technology somehow to have as much community as we want, and somehow we are almost more isolated in some
Absolutely.
ways.
Yeah. You just brought up something else that I wanted to ask you, and I want to know what you're doing, and I have another question for you. So, do you have a few more minutes?
Sure.
Okay. Let's pull the thread on that, the technology piece. What would you say to people out there that are spending, I'm talking cross-generational. This is not just Gen Z or whatever. I'm talking about grandmas are sitting there on their phones, lost in TikTok, hours on end, and the grandchildren are not connecting. What do you say to people out there? How do we protect ourselves? What's the discipline that we can still have the digital connection, but not have it have us. Going back to,
Exactly. Right. Yeah. I've met many people and they said I had to delete the app because I was just on it all the time. I'm like, oh, I've never done that, but I was like, it's on my phone. I go into it when I need it. I go off when I don't. I would say, do you have purpose and passion in your life? That'd be the first thing. Because I think if you're busy about your busyness and you have things to do, you will be less doom scrolling and stuff because you just wouldn't have the time. I think people sometimes with their relationship to time don't realize that they have less than they think. There's a finite to life in general, that there's an end date. And so with that, how much do you want to learn? How much do you want to know about a person? How deep do you want to go with them? Then that takes time, right? So use the technology for what it could do. Not a person who says utilize technology or I push against the technology like AI, for instance, because I know that it's a tool and can do that. But the tools are amoral, right? They're not good, they're not bad, they're what you make them, right? If I use a rock and I make food, great. Use the rock and I kill a person, totally different. Same rock. And the rock, it didn't do it, it was me. So I think it's just people, if they start asking those questions about their purpose and what they're good at and how they can be helpful and what society needs, then they'll start down a path of working on that. and be so fulfilled that they won't have so much time to do that. It doesn't mean that you can't have it any of the time. It just means it's the icing, not the cake, right? So figuring out balance for your life, I used to call it balance. Now what I call it integration. How does it all work as an ecosystem together? So if you're using Instagram or TikTok and it's helping you build your business or connect with people, amazing. If it's making you more anxious or disconnected, then don't do it. If it's not loving you back, don't do it. In the same way, like people turn on the news, I listen to news. People say, well, you're not going to be informed. It's like, hey, look, if I need to be informed about it and it's that important, it'll come to me. I will find out. Don't worry. But it's not like I turn on the news and they're just giving me so much good information and positivity and joy that I just do.
Who's not loving you back?
No, because if it leads, it bleeds. The
Right.
death toll's going up. We want to talk about that. I'm sure
Right.
there are great things that happen. They don't. There's no excitement to that. If you watch the movie and everything's good in the beginning and the middle and end, no one's gonna make that movie. It's just not worth. We need tragedy and then triumph. That's what we want to see. We push that out there, but I don't think there's a right or wrong way. But if you are grandma with those grandkids, it's like you want to be able to spend the quality time with them. And I tell people all the time, it's not about the thing that you do. It's about the togetherness. You could be at Disneyland. It's like when I was a kid, we didn't have all of the technology. And so you just went outside and you made up games. You have a stick, you draw something on the ground. Everybody was having fun. We didn't care. You had a ball. It could be all the kinds of things.
I do not envy, Cliff, the parents that are bringing kids in today, because Facebook came along when my kids were around 10, 12, something like that. And I failed epically in a few ways because I had no idea how to protect them and everything turned out okay. But now it's AI and it's this and it's that. And it's not just the grandmas, it's the parents. They're numbing themselves, they're escaping into their phones. I don't know. It's the connection piece, it's the community piece, it's the collaboration piece, it's the human pieces that I think we're going to need to really work to keep and to strengthen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That tuning out is important, though. Now, again, society is teaching you to tune out because you become more controllable. And so they're focusing on that. And the same way, I met someone, you don't see as many stay at home moms, but they're like, I want to be a stay at home mom. I was like, my mom worked. So I didn't, at first I was like, everyone should work. But now I was like, no, I get it. Why would you want to, if you could, outsource your kids to someone else to teach them what they want to be? That's your kid. And so I was like, I get it. And I'm not saying that you should do one thing or the other, but I was like, but I understand why a person would want to do that. It's like, you don't want to outsource the television or social media to be the babysitter of your kid. That they will emulate and parent and learn from whatever they see the most.
And it literally changes their brains. If they're on pads at 2 and 3 years old, it changes their brains. I want you to please remind us, where can people find you? Are you coaching individual people? What's coming up? Tell me what's going on with you, and then mention your books again and where they can find them.
Sure. People do ask me to coach. I have a few people that I coach. It hasn't been like a major thing that I do because I also physically do a lot of things. People can always reach out to me at Cliff Beach Music on all the social platforms. They can email me, cliff@sidehustleandflow.net. I blog 5 articles a week for free on sidehustleandflow.net, so people can see the articles there. And the book, Side Hustle and Flow, Shape Up, and coming in February, the 3rd, The Daily Grind, they'll all be out on Amazon and Audible and all the places where books are sold, and notebook, etc. But it's exciting to be able to do these mediums and get it out there. I just want people to have hope. I want them to be able to believe in themselves and to believe that today is the day to get off Sunday aisle, do the thing, just do the thing.
Do the thing.
Yeah, just do the thing.
I love that. All right, are you ready for the last question?
Sure.
Okay. How do you recommend that our listeners go out and live their most alive lives?
How do I recommend them to live their most alive lives? I think it's going to sound morbid, but I think, like the person who was retiring, think about death. Think about the legacy that you want to leave. When I did a podcast, and that became my radio show, I asked every musician I interview, what is your legacy in the future you want to be? And they're all different. And it doesn't mean there's the right choice. It just means I, for myself, wanted people to know that you can do whatever you set your mind to, no matter your socioeconomic status or where you come from or who you know, because things are figure outable, people are findable. Those barriers are only mental blocks and barriers, right? But for them to live their best life, go out there and fail forward and fail hard and fail fast. Because just think about when you were a baby learning to walk, you fell a bunch of times before you got it, but you never once doubted that you would get it. And everybody did it. And the reason why that worked so well is because you didn't know you were an apprentice. You surrounded yourself by people who knew how to do it and you saw them doing it. And that made you believe. In the same way you learned to speak so quickly because you parroted everybody who were experts at speaking that language. And so I think it's, yeah, about doing it, doing it fast. 10,000 experiments, if you can do that in a faster time. Tony Robbins said he became a great speaker because people would give one speech a month. He gave 5 a day. If you 5x, 10x your life, it'll happen quick because you've now accelerated the process. So not everything, good things take time, but I think the ultimate thing is just believe in yourself and in 5 seconds start taking action. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Put the shoes on, go running. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Send that email. Go look up that person. Set up the coaching thing. Whatever it is, go do it. Because if you don't do it in the first 5 seconds, your mind will give you 100 reasons not to do it, but you only need one compelling reason to do it because you
Perfect.
believe you can.
I love it. I love it. So, what is the podcast name? What is your podcast?
Podcasts on the radio show are called Deeper Grooves, and you can check out the Deeper Grooves radio show on the SoCalSound.org.
Nice. Nice. Okay. And what do you play? What are your instruments? I bet you do.
Oh wow! Oh my gosh, we didn't even talk about music, but yeah,
I know.
I sing, I play keyboard. I have a 9-piece funk band, and we have at least 10 or 12 albums out on all the streaming platforms, so people can check that out under Cliff Beach. And yeah, I just love. You talk about vibration energy. I love it.
I'm totally going to Spotify and I'm going to download you. What is your genre? What is your focus in your music?
I do funk, soul, R&B, blues, jazz. I call it like all the American roots.
Wow. Did you know Malcolm Jamal Warner?
Yes.
Yeah, what a good man. He was my
Mm-hmm.
neighbor. We lived next
Wow.
door to, I know that was devastating, but he was a beautiful musician. Just,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Grammy winner, of course.
Yeah. It's the
Uh,
same sort of musical roots there. So I thought maybe you'd know each other. Yeah.
uh,
Maybe we'll have you back and we'll talk only about music. So we'll see how that goes. But thank
happy
you.
to.
Thank you for being here and sharing your energy and your aliveness and your excitement about life. You said something in the beginning about it's not necessarily new information, but it's important that it be told with your voice so
Hmm.
that people can hear that are ready to hear it from you. I'm really excited you're here. Thank you for joining us today on Wake Up with Joni. If today's conversation with Cliff Beach lit something up inside you, a desire to step into your authentic power, create with purpose, or finally make that change you've been whispering to yourself about, then I invite you to share this episode with somebody that you care about and go out and get his books. They'll be in the show notes. The more we give, the bigger difference we can make. And if you haven't yet picked up my book, Stop, Look, Choose Your Journey to Peace and Freedom, a guide to awakening, aligning, and consciously choosing your life, go out and get that as well. And if you're ready for deeper support, clarity, or accountability, and a powerful shift in your inner or outer world, coach with one of us. I'd love to explore coaching with you. Click on my Calendly link in the show notes and schedule a conversation. Now, this is my favorite part. Now, beautiful humans, it's your turn to go out and live your most alive lives.